Hello everybody, welcome to Wisdom Entrepreneurs. We are coming to you from Pepper Street Studios.
Whoop, whoop.
How cute is that? So we've just done a couple of hours of recording podcasts, which has been exciting. We love a good podcast, don't we, Tracy? Perhaps we can start. Oh, here he is. Whoop, whoop. I thought I was going to have to tell some of my dirty jokes then. No, not me.
I can't mute myself now.
I haven't got dirty jokes.
Hey, Joe.
Hi, Joe.
My computer decided to crash before this happened.
Technology.
Restarted. Sorry about that. Oh, what a nice looking group we've got here. Omar and let me see, Shirley Voss and Debbie Milan. Lots of familiar faces here. Yeah.
Oh,
Leslie and Alfie and Mama J and Dawn and the famous Derek.
Oh, Joe.
the famous Derek. Not
Yeah, the new movie star.
Oh, Joe.
Oh, it's so
Oh,
nice to
man.
be here.
Really good to be with you guys. Always good to see your faces. It lightens my heart.
Oh.
Same.
Likewise, Joe.
And there's Peter. Hey, Pete. 3P Pete.
Yay. So, this special episode is coming to you from I just keep looking at the name on the wall, and our guest speaker is Joe Bailey, who's come to talk to us tonight about anything really, but also about his upcoming book, Driving in the Eye of the Hurricane. But as you know,
Dive in.
Pardon?
Just dive into the eye. Yeah.
We are. As you know, Wisdom Entrepreneurs is a informal conversation. It's all about, imagine sitting in a living room. We're all sitting together, favorite beverage, nice cup of cocoa or spritzer or a mocktail or water. And
Nice choice, Leslie.
And if you're in the UK, you've probably got a blanket on and your nice cozy slippers. And and so it's informal, it's conversational. If you want to ask something that you feel like you don't, you can just ask. You can just ask. We welcome you here, and everybody's voice is welcomed, and we want you to join in. So on that, did you have anything to add?
No, just that I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to let's get started.
And even though we look like we're in different places, we're all in the same place.
Yeah. I love this the Zoom meetings. It's brought our world so much closer together, hasn't it? I feel like not only do we not have to travel to see each other, but we get to be in each other's homes and where we live, and just seeing your backgrounds and stuff. It just feels like you're invited into someone's personal life in a deeper way. So I really always enjoy doing these. And I don't know if you guys want to have me start to just talk a little bit, or I can, just kind of let people know what I've been up to, and then open it up to questions. I love questions. It always just triggers, insight in the moment and responsive to wherever you're at and what your questions are, or your wonderings. And so, but I'll just tell a little bit, if that's the way you want me to start. Derek, is that cool with you?
That's perfect.
Perfect, Joe.
Yeah, you look very official, like a disc jockey there. You and Mama J, like you could be DJs, Oh God, that reminds me. One time when I was on book tour for my book, Slowing Down at the Speed of Love, and I was in Cleveland, the home of the Hall of Fame of rock and roll. And so I was on one of these morning radio jock shows where there's like 6 DJs around a table, and they're interviewing me about slowing down the speed of love. And so and they introduced me. They said, "Oh, what do we got here? We've got Dr. Phil with hair." And it went down from there. It was just like a bunch of jocks sitting around a table and giving each other a hard time. So how do we find love, Joe Bailey? And they just went around. And I said, well, I can see I'm going to need to do some group therapy here this morning. Oh, and they said, oh, and yeah, you're really going to have a challenge with us. And it was just great. Anyway, I don't know why I remembered that, but it just popped into my head. Those days of touring, going on book tour are over at this point. There's Mark Williams just joined us. Hi, Mark.
Sorry to be late.
That's all right. So I've been really excited about my new book that was supposed to have come out last week. And everything in the world was kind of slowed down to the speed of life, or to the speed of stop, actually, with the supply chain. And we have, huge boats full of shipments from China and Japan and all over the East and LA harbor waiting to get unloaded. But there's been an oil spill there, and just, I'm sure you're experiencing it wherever you are in the world too. But one of the side effects of that is they couldn't get my book published. It won't be out in the UK until December, just in time for Christmas, the holidays, and in November in Minnesota, or in the United States, where we live here. And so there's a perfect timing to everything, is how I see that, and gives me more time to just get it out there. So I wrote this book because, when you learn the principles for yourself, you all know this, you can't help but want to share it with other people, because you see that people are suffering needlessly. If they knew this, if they knew how their individual experience of life was created from the inside out, we wouldn't be so afraid of the outside variables, the hurricane of our lives these days, whether it's a real hurricane or a tornado, or being in lockdown with the pandemic, or political division, or you name it. There is a crisis of the day in our world. And without a psychological immune system that's really strong, without knowing that part of you that is mentally healthy, resilient, your true self, your true essence,
if you're doing potatoes.
You're protected. You're protected from adversity. You're protected from taking it personally. You're protected from suffering, because you know the source of where suffering is coming from. It's from the power of universal mind, universal thought, and universal consciousness. And when we know that we're, and I forget too, I get caught up in my thinking just like anybody else. And when the pandemic hit and everything started shutting down and all my trips got canceled, and I was going to Italy and going to go to London for the conference and all these things, and it was like, oh no, now what do we do? But I saw in myself and people who kind of had the psychological immunity booster, called the 3 principles, responded to that adversity in a much more resilient, healthy, responsive, creative, and intelligent way. Not that we don't get thrown off. I still get thrown off. We all do. We're all human, but with an understanding of how the mind works, it doesn't take too long before insight pops in and go, oh, wait a minute, here we go again. It's my thinking that's creating this. And seeing that and seeing your innocence at the same time in that. So there's no judgment. It's not like you're judging yourself. It's just like you're having a human experience. And when I remember where that comes from, it settles me down and you down. There's a settling that happens. There's the peace that passes all understanding takes over. This inner peace, this divine intelligence, this spiritual force, this divine consciousness, whatever we want to call that, is our true nature, and it just kind of pops to the surface, floating on the top again, even though it can get pushed down with our negative thinking, with our fearful thinking, because it's there, it just pops back up. And so I wrote this book because of all the great work you guys are doing in Beyond Recovery, and so many other people around the world. Debbie Milan with her work in the churches, and Mark, your work with the global network, free counseling on the 3 principles, and so many other people who I don't even know all who's here today, but all of you are doing such incredible work. And so I wanted to write a book about those stories of how this is changing the world, one person at a time, one awakening at a time. And my publisher gave me the title, Thriving in the Eye of the Hurricane. And that's unusual. I usually have my own titles. But I loved it because it really spoke to this, because the eye of a hurricane, as some of you may know, in the UK, they probably don't have hurricanes, but we have them in the United States a lot. At the eye of that, it's calm. It's quiet. And if planes fly in there or birds fly in there, there's no disruption. It's total peace. And within our mind's eye, the mind's eye, there is this calm in the storm, this safe place in the insecurities of our life, of the unpredictabilities of our life, of the challenges of our life. And when we get caught up in the swirling winds of thought, our personal thinking, it feels bad. It feels icky. It feels painful. And it's supposed to, because it's trying to guide you back to the eye. It's guiding you back to sanity, to your resilience, to your true self, to your spiritual essence. It's a guidance system. But without an understanding of how that works, you can get caught up in the emotions of your thinking innocently and spend your whole life there. And as a clinical psychologist, I would examine the debris in the hurricane. Oh, here's an old fence post, and there's a broken window, and here's some child's toys. And so we'd go back and sift through all that, hoping to find peace of mind. And of course, the answer wasn't there. It was within the eye. It was within our true self, the source of insight and wisdom and new thinking. And so I wanted to write this book as almost a survival handbook, but more of a thrival handbook. A thrival handbook in the sense that it's not enough to just cope with negativity. We want to transcend negativity and see new possibilities to recreate our world as we have throughout the generations of time. Human beings throughout time have recreated their world in times of great tragedy, world wars, other pandemics, floods, hurricanes, just political strife. Throughout the times, there's been, out of the ashes of negativity is a rebirth of a civilization. And so we're rebirthing the civilization right now as we speak, through all of you and all people who will listen to this and people who may never listen to this. We will find ways through going inside, reflecting within, and kind of offering the problem up in a sense, and just in faith and knowing, wait for the answer to occur, and it will occur. So I interviewed, Beyond Recovery, all you fine folks here who I'm speaking to today, and Peter, his poem is in the book, head of one of the chapters. Debbie Milam, I see here, her story of her experiences in dealing with chronic pain and illness, and so many others' stories are in the book to kind of bring to life the ideas of the principle, the words about the principles, to show it through stories. And so that's what I did. And I've been having a ball doing a podcast about that and just interviewing a lot of you on those podcasts. And thank you so much for sharing yourself and your story and your truth. So that's what I've been up to. And enjoying life to the fullest. Today in Minnesota, it's fall. And if you look out my window, you see the fall colors. And yesterday, my 86-year-old brother and I and a couple of friends and my wife went for a long bike ride, seeing the fall color and going through the hills and valleys of the St. Croix River Valley. Just had a wonderful day. So I'm happy.
Wow. That's a wonderful day. It's funny, because I felt like we were just in the hurricane because we had this beautiful day in this beautiful studio, and we've recorded some podcasts, and we're all in a good feeling, and then all of a sudden there was chaos and the tech wasn't working properly, and people needed to go outside for various reasons, and then people needed cables, and there was chaos. And in the chaos, I felt myself looking at the debris of the chaos and thinking, we should have done this earlier, and we should have done that, and we should have. But all I knew in the moment was host. The word kept coming to me, host. So I just knew into the eye. I'm just gonna let all that go on around me and be here for the people who are remember and be present. And what was really interesting then, I felt like I was sat in the eye while all the chaos was still going on around me. And then as you started speaking, the chaos settled. I never knew that when we get caught in the debris and in the chaos, the feeling is guiding us back to the eye. I never really saw it like that before. And that makes total sense. And it's like we experienced it in the moment, just then. Really beautiful.
Do you know, also from what you said, Joe, when you said it sort of takes over, when you get into that space, it sort of takes over. And for me, I'm honored for you to have taken one story out of my life and put in your book. And for me, in that example is where that feeling took over. And it wouldn't have taken over unless I didn't have some sort of understanding as to what was going on. Whereas before, I was in a nervous situation, I was sweating, and I was starting to have a whole heap of thinking about what other people were thinking. But through I'd been on the Beyond Recovery course, I thought, where is this coming from? Is it really coming from them? Is it really them that started to make me break out in a fit of sweat? Or is it my thinking? And just being able to look back in that direction and stop looking outward is like everything, like it, just what you said, it took over me. A feeling of calm and a feeling of there's nothing for me to do. And nobody's really doing what I think they're doing. And if they are, it shouldn't bother me. And I'm sitting there waiting for someone who's loving to come and see me. So I'm going to sit in that space. And while I was there in that space, I could see that words take over just hit me, because it was that whole space just became relevant and real to me. And the thinking I had employed seconds earlier was just totally irrelevant. But like, it's easy to fall out of it. And then when you fall out of it, that's what's real to you now. But once I saw that you could be in the storm and see in the eye and live in the calm, then that sort of made me know that I could do that anywhere. And it's about that takeover, because when it takes over you and I feel the way I feel, then it's like an invincible feeling of just being in the calm, and nothing can hurt me apart from me. And I just love the word, where you said take over. That's what I feel when I'm in that mode. It just takes over me, and that is, I am my true self to the fullest in that moment. And that is what you said, it rises to the top or it takes over. But I just love that feeling when the true me takes over and pushes the majority of my thinking to the side. I love that word, Joe, take over. So that's, yeah, I love that.
Even the reason why that resonates for me as well, because all my life, I've been living with the three principles all my life. I just didn't really know it like that. I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't aware that I was using it. And if you told me that, to win this race, at the starting line, when they say go, you just got to reverse. You don't have to go with everyone. You don't have to race with everyone. You don't have to compete in this race. You just have to reverse, and you go back to you. And that's what comes up to me. That's what comes up for me when you said that, because now it takes over. Now it can rise to the top. Before, I had something kind of, I don't know what I had, but my thoughts wouldn't let it rise, because I would invest in my thoughts and invest in the intellect. But now I'm doing that reverse at the starting line. Now it's taking over. Now the wisdom's taking over. Now the feeling is taking over, where I'm aware of it and I can use it and I can go with it instead of fighting it with my intellect. So that really resonates with me when you said take over, because now that I'm aware, now it can take over. And when it was taking over and I wasn't aware, I was muddled. I was like, what's going on here? What is this? But now that I'm aware of it, I can allow it to take over, and I can trust it to take over.
And even when you haven't been aware of it before you learn this, it took over, right? Because it's the driving force. When one of the metaphors I use in the book is, long time ago, before I learned the three principles, I used to do wilderness adventures because as a therapist, being stuck in an office, I wanted to take people out in the woods where I love to be. And I used to love rock climbing, mountain climbing. And so I organized these retreats where we would rock climb, and then we'd have sit around the campfire and talk about whatever to help people self-realize. And so after a day of rock climbing, everybody's muscles would be really sore, and we would go to this river called the Temperance River, aptly named. That was about 20-minute ride away. And we would first give people an understanding of how currents work. You're going to hang under this waterfall and you're going to hold on to this rock, and it's going to pound on your back and take all the tension out of your back. It's going to make your muscles feel so good. But after you do that, after you've been healed, you have to let go of the rock. And the force of the waterfall will take you underwater 20 feet. But no, don't fear that, because the water knows where it's going and it will pop you out on top. 40 feet away down the river, you will pop out. Now, if you struggle and you fight with it, you might take in some water, but it will still pop you out. And so when people did this, some people were terrified of water, or they didn't know what to do. They would, oh no, I can't do it, I can't. Finally, you had no choice. Once you hung on to that under the waterfall, you couldn't get back out. You had to go down. There was no choice. No choice. And they had to trust us and have faith that this is going to work. And they also watched other people do it. And then when they came out, they were laughing and happy and, oh my God, that's wonderful, I want to do it again. And so they started to get a feeling that that's just how it works. That's just how it works. When I let go, the current takes me under, knowing that I will pop out later. And so when we're going through struggles or hard times, it can be painful. It can be the darkest before the dawn moment. It can be frightening. But when you know it's only your thoughts that are frightening you, and that the river knows where it's going, the divine intelligence knows how to pop you out, then you beg for more. I want to do that again. And every day they would want to do it again. And I feel that way too, Derek. And I feel, Omar, what you were saying, and Mama J and Pete, that you're the more that you know this, when you do go under, there's almost an excitement that, oh, I can't wait to see what I'm going to learn this time. Wonder what insight's going to pop out this time. And when you know that, adversity doesn't become a negative, it becomes, I would say, God's way of rounding off the rough edges of our thinking and allowing us to enjoy the ride more readily, more freely. And the more we let go and we live in our divine intelligence, people will be attracted to that and they'll want a piece of that. They'll say, please tell me what you know. Why do you look so happy? What's going on? How is this possible? And then they'll try to make you special. Oh, you must be special. You have a gift. And you want to remind them, no, what I can do, you can do, and more. To quote Jesus, another great enlightened person, what I can do, you can do, and more. Because we're capable of so much more than we think we know or that we can do. And with that comes humility, because it's not you personally, it's you impersonally. There's an impersonal you that is there popping you out. Isn't because you're some great Mark Spitz swimmer. If you wouldn't even know how to swim in the waterfall, pop you out. So you don't have to have a lot of knowledge intellectually or be a really smart person with a PhD and an MD. You can be someone with no education and no background, and you can be the most incredible teacher, as you guys are living examples of in your lives. Like, wow. You go to the annual conference and some of the most powerful speakers are the new ones, the ones without the degrees, the ones who've been under the longest and popped out the highest, So this is for everybody. Anyway, Michael loved that metaphor. He talked about it last week when he interviewed me on his show. And it came to my mind when Derek was sharing what you were sharing, because it's just, it feels like you're not really doing anything, so you can't take credit, but you get to enjoy the river or the eye.
And for me, that's like a comfort, but it's also a part that gets me back in my head, because I know there's no planned technique for me to do. And like you said, you could be some Michael Phelps and an expert swimmer, but no technique is going to help you. You just have to let yourself trust in yourself and trust in knowing that there's no need to fight or resist. You will pop out at the other end. And I think that's so key in life, Joe. That's like a metaphor for how my life was. I was constantly standing underneath the waterfall and constantly being drawn under and fighting to try and get back to where I thought I needed to be, or I needed to be a bit over to the left. The river is going to pop me out over there. No, I need to be that way. How can I get over that way? Constantly fighting and not trusting in myself and the river to know that it's got a plan for me. And it's planned for me. I will be okay. And wherever it pops me out, same thing you said, when you pop out, it's like, yeah, I want to do it again. But when they're resisting, it's like, oh, how did I end up here? What am I doing here? But when you don't resist and you end up where you're meant to be, then that is just a beautiful feeling. And the surrendering to that feeling for me was like a surrendering that opened up my life in different ways that I couldn't even dream about. And I think the way, even in your book, when you explained my little story, the way you explained over it just resonated with me so deeply. And to know that you don't know nothing more than me about the stories I've heard of this, but you can still look behind the actions that were taking place in my life and pinpoint what was going on behind the actions. And that is such a beautiful thing to know that somebody else can point into what's going on behind for me, because it's going on behind for everybody else, exactly the same thing. And just to stop resisting, don't resist the flow of life, the natural intelligence, what it's got planned for us. And I think that story speaks volumes to me, Joe. I need to go to that. I need to go to that waterfall.
Come on, Minnesota. Come on. But do it in the summer. Don't come in the winter.
Oh man, that's a beautiful story, Joe.
I love that story because once you go under, you want to do it again, because now you have more trust in the system. And like, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I mentioned it today to these guys, and there's a little analogy I got of the bowling alley. And if once you bowl, you're trying to get the strike, but you've got the gutters at either side. And if you've got 3 balls and you've rolled 2 already and they've hit the gutters, you're going to be scared to roll the 3rd. But I realized that our resilience and our wisdom is like those barriers, because once you got the barriers, you don't care. You're just going to keep rolling, going again, knowing you're going to get the strike. And that's all I'm hearing. It's just like, I realize now, sorry, it's brought me to a deeper understanding, because I realize when I think there's no railings, I'm scared to roll the ball. My thinking takes over. I'm scared. I'm thinking, oh, what if I go left, or what if I go right, or what if the water does take me, and what if the water doesn't do with me what it does with everybody else? And that's the bit that's blocking. But when you trust in what the water does, because the water does what water does, and when you trust in that, same way like the guides on the bowling alley, when you trust in them, you'll just keep bowling. And it's true, when you said, when you come out on the other side and you're excited, that's what keeps me bowling, if that makes sense. I keep bowling now because I know that I'm gonna get the strike. It's gonna bounce off the sides, but it's gonna hit the strike. And I feel like that's the trust within yourself.
Yeah. In times of the unknown, which is every time, we're always going into the unknown, right? It takes faith. And faith is just knowing without knowing the details. And the more that you go under and you pop out, you get joy, but your faith goes from maybe it'll work, I hope it works, to I know I'm going to be fine. I'm going to land on my feet. I'm going to pop out. And that knowing is what allows us to go into the unknown of our lives, which is full of unknown. And it's not any more unknown now than it ever has been. It just, the news makes it seem like it is. And I'm not saying that we aren't in some major crisis with the climate and all the changes happening with that. That's man-made, human, what we've done to ourselves innocently without realizing the consequences of what we were doing through greed, etc. But when we're going into that unknown and we know we're going to be fine, we experience a feeling of faith, which is knowing without knowing. In that chapter that Peter wrote, the poem in the beginning of is Living in the Unknown, is the chapter title. I tell the story of a guy I met who was a psychiatrist, and he had been in World War II as a medic, and he had had a near-death experience before that and had a unbelievable transformation. And he volunteered for the war, and he was on Normandy, on the beaches there as a medic. And then when the war ended, they assigned him to Auschwitz, to the camps, to help the people who were in Auschwitz to be reunited with their families, or just get them clothing, or, just help them, the ones that survived. And when he got to the camp, he was just disheartened and horrified at what he saw, the skeletons of people starving to death, and the ovens and the whole thing. I don't want to repeat the horror, but he said there was one guy there that looked like he had just arrived, and he walked up to him, and he called him Wild Bill because he had a big curly mustache. He was skinny like the others, but he had a big smile on his face, and his face was radiant. And he says, "My God, you must have just gotten here. You look great." He says, "Oh no, I've been here for 5 years." He says, "Well, how did you do that?" And he said, "When the Nazis killed everyone in my small town in Poland, everyone I'd ever known, all my family, all my friends, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, everybody but me, I was the only survivor in my small town because I knew 5 languages. They thought I would be of use to them." So he said, in that moment, I was so filled with hate for the Nazis. I wanted to kill every one of them. And I was just embroiled with hate. And then I had an insight. He says, and I realized I was no different than they. I hated them as much as they hated me for being a Jew. And in that moment, he had a transformation, and he said, I knew that I wanted to live in love only in love. And for the 5 years he was there, he always had unconditional hope for himself and for everybody. And he carried that feeling to everyone in the camp. And he helped a lot of people survive. So when the doctor saw that, he couldn't understand, how could that happen? How is that possible? And so after the war, he went to medical school, he became a doctor, and then he became a psychiatrist. And but his whole career, he was searching in psychiatry and psychology for an explanation of how this worked. And then he heard Sydney Banks on a talk somewhere, a recording, and he said, that guy knows. That guy knows. And so he came down from North Carolina, where he had his own institute on death and dying, and they researched near-death experiences, and it ended up becoming a book, Life After Life. So he was a famous guy, but he came to the institute in Florida to learn about Sydney Banks and the 3 principles, because he said, I think they know how this happened. And we had Dr. Ritchie was his name, and Michael, my wife, and I, we just had the most amazing time with him. He's just this very spiritual, incredibly grounded guy, and he had so much respect for Sid. He knew this was the missing link. This was the missing piece in psychiatry and psychology. And I'm sure he's dead and gone now. He was quite old at that time, 40 years ago. So he'd either be 120 by now, or he's long gone. But he impacted my life with his story and the power of the principles. And I just listened to Sid, because Shane Kennedy released another new video of Sid. Some of you may have heard that yesterday. It was really powerful. And just how this is going to change the world through a deeper understanding of the mind beyond the confines of mere rationalism. Not intellectually, a realization of mind, what mind is. And knowledge is power.
I think that's so powerful, Joe. I think that story there in itself is so powerful because, like Omar said before about the principles and knowing the principles are in you, in all of us. For him to go through that and see them kill off or do so much terrible things to his village, but he can be in that moment where something has to take over because he can't just lose all of that feeling. Something has to take over. So his true self has taken over, the love has taken over him, and that transcends everything, all of those feelings what he had. And throughout the 5 years he was there, he still managed to keep that feeling going and know that it was coming from him and try to help other people. But when that took him over, that's such a powerful thing to cancel out all of those other feelings and just show him what his truth is and him to stay true to that truth. It couldn't have been hard, but for him to stay true to that, he knows how that must have made him felt. And he knew anything other than that wasn't right. So for him to stay true to that, that is proof that the principles are in action in everybody, whether you know about them or not. And then for him to hear, or the guy to hear Sid and then just know that that's connected to the same thing what happened there, that's just truth, recognizing truth. And I think that's just a beautiful story, Joe. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
How is this resonating with everybody else? Do you want to say something, share something, ask any questions?
Hi, Jacqueline. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Debbie.
So good to see you guys. Boy, so much today. The waterfall, the bowling, the story you just told, Joe. And wow. I'm so deeply, deeply touched. And, you know, I have seen this so clearly myself, you know, talking about the river popping you back up, talking about the bumpers. I had an experience several years ago, and I walked outside, and it was a beautiful, beautiful pre-dawn sky, and I saw just some vague shooting stars go across the sky, and I just said a prayer that I'd never prayed before. God, show me the magnitude of your majesty. And in my heart, not in an audible voice, but wisdom, the knowing that if I ever truly understood the magnitude of God's majesty, I would never worry again. That this God, this divine intelligence behind life, holds the planets in place, spins them at just the right speed so we don't fly off and they don't collide with one another, gives us gravity so we don't fly off the earth, beats our hearts, digests our food. So much goes on behind the scenes that we're not even aware of. And that divine intelligence, whether you believe in it or not, is still at work. But when you start to believe in it and when you start to trust it, oh my gosh, that's when the wisdom comes through. That's when you don't have to figure things out, but you're guided to your next right step. And sometimes that next right step is do nothing. And sometimes that next right step is to take an action, but it's a guided action. And this year, as I faced my mortality so many times, that I could still have this much joy, that I could still have peace, that, and it's in Joe's book about how much of the work I had produced before I had gotten sick came out in the world without me doing a thing. You know, our middle school mental health videos went out to 5 million people on a PBS station. Like, I couldn't do that myself. I had no clue how to do that. But the divine intelligence behind life, God, I couldn't even hold a glass. So I'm watching this. And the more you see it, the more you see it. you know, you see it once, it's like you're lifting a 1 pound weight. You see it twice, all of a sudden you can lift a 2 pound weight. You see it 5 times, now you can lift a 5 pound weight. And can you control the circumstances of your life? Hell no, absolutely not. And there's nothing I did to bring on these catastrophic health issues right now. But if the divine intelligence behind life, if God allowed it, and I suit up and show up, he can use it for good. And I'm so grateful for this understanding that I'm not in control. But through that surrender, I don't think if it was Omar or Derek talking about that surrender and letting go, that's when it can flow in and through us. That's when we don't have to do it by our own strength. And it's amazing what happens. So I love you guys so much. And thank you. Thank you.
You know what?
Debbie's story in the book is one of my favorites, just so powerful. And it's so practical too. I love that part of your story in the book, Debbie, where you talk about how you had this weird feeling about some medication you were taking, that it didn't feel right to keep taking it, and you didn't know why, and you tried to talk to the doctors, and it turned out that in your unique genetics and in your unique body, that medication was counterindicated. And even though they were all trying to pressure you into taking it, something in you told you not to. And again, that's that universal intelligence of wisdom, the divine intelligence. And the doctor listened to you and looked it up and oh my God, thank God we didn't prescribe that for you. It would have killed you.
But Joe, you want to hear part 2 of that story?
Well,
It gets even better. So 3 weeks ago, I was finally led to an immunologist. And for the first time, someone's really understanding what happened to my body post-COVID. And he's talking about the same treatment. And he said, but we have to do like multiple lab panels so we get the exact right dosage and the exact right immunological panel to match it. This other doctor 18 months ago was just going to throw it at the wall and see what stuck. I would have died from that for sure. But this doctor's like, you know what? We have to run 20 different panels to match it. And it's like, oh, now I know why I was so guided not to do it then. But here it comes roundabout again that this may be the treatment. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Debbie.
Love you so much.
Gracie's got her hand up. I don't know if I should be calling on. I guess that's not my job. That's my
Sorry,
job.
I had to let the dog in, otherwise he's just going to keep scratching at the door until I do. Hi everybody. It's great to be here. It's great to be on the call. I'm so happy I saw the email pop in. I love what Debbie just shared, because something just really kind of dropped in. And everybody, and Omar, your analogy about the bowling was great as well. But you know, I got caught up in the storm in the last few weeks, and it's funny because it's a pattern that I've seen every time at this time of year when my kids go back to school. I get caught up in the exact same kind of loop of thinking again, and it's around them back to school and the extra expenses and yada yada yada. It's the same old story. It's boring. and I noticed that when I fall out of this lovely groundedness, because I've been in it so much for the last year and a half, that I get really annoyed. I get really irritated. It's like I am annoyed at myself for the thinking that I have that's keeping me out of being grounded. So it's like I know I'm having the thinking, but then I'm having arguments with thinking. So then there's a whole other layer of it. But I saw something saw something kind of today, and actually what Debbie spoke about, that the surrender, in that I had kind of the beginning of this year really decided I'm just going to surrender, I'm just completely letting go, and the process of that. But I saw today, I had surrendered with buts, with kind of conditions, and I had surrendered, but with an expectation that it was somehow going to show up in a way that fit in with the illusion that I had created for myself. And it's funny because I was doing a little video around that last week about, we look to the outside for this stability, for guidance, but it's just an illusion. Like there's nothing there, it's like you can put your hand out and it'll just, like a ghost, kind of drop through it. And I just went, you're doing the exact same thing. It's why you're caught up in this thinking, because you think you should be someplace else. You think that because you have surrendered, that you should be someplace else by now. So you're not being in the moment. You're still being in the nearly like a low level waiting. Like I'm in this, when the planes are circling, waiting to land. But on a really unconscious level that I didn't see it. And so to hear, Debbie speak about surrendering to the illness and allowing it to, that was just really, really powerful.
Remember the days, Tracy, when we would do affirmations? I don't know if you ever did affirmations. It was a popular thing to do. You're going to create wealth, you're going to create the perfect mate, you're going to create the this and the that. And it was always so disappointing, because it didn't quite always work out. Look out for what you wish for, that old saying, because it never quite worked out, because again, it was looking outside and trying to control the outside through thinking. And that's ass backwards. It's letting, when the thoughts settle, you see the path forward. You see that like in Debbie's situation, that something was bugging her about that pill, and it led to curiosity, which led to Googling it, which led to comparing it to her tests. You see the divine intelligence was guiding her every step of the way to see, oh, if I take that, that's going to kill me, which inspired her to tell the physician. So it's when you follow, it's like following the thread of truth through, and your negative feelings, your insecure feelings, just are the bumpers. They're just the bumpers on the side of the bowling alley that keep you in the same lane, in the straightaway. So you're being guided all the time. We're all being guided through intuition, insight, a feeling, a knowing, a coincidence, curiosity. The curiosity is a divine thought in the form of a question. I wonder if I'll ever find my true love. I wonder if I'll ever be truly successful, or I wonder if I should pick up some tomatoes at the store on my way home. It can be really ordinary. I wonder, and when wonderings come into the mind, that's a sight from within, an insight that is guiding us. There's this hand of the divine guiding us, and when we listen deeply and don't judge our thinking, it I don't know, it just kind of clears the way so we can hear that a little bit better. And that's you know, the 4th chapter of my book is about the nature of transformation and how we go through these loops of insight that take us to higher and higher levels of consciousness. On Sid's tape, he says that the only way humanity is going to change is through a change in level of consciousness. This is the only way we'll get through this, is a change in level of consciousness. And consciousness is only birthed in a way through adversity, through curiosity, wondering, you know, oh no, not this, you know, and oh, and oh, can sometimes be a real breakthrough. Pardon my French. But, you know, it's the oh moments that are sometimes the best in the end.
Mm.
Isn't that right, Mama J?
It really is. It really
On the other side of oh is aha.
Yeah, I've had a lot of except I would be using slightly stronger language because they
Oh,
were a
you
bit
would.
more than
Yeah.
they were
Oh,
just they were more than an
I hear what you're saying. I hear it.
Yeah. And you know, on another level, like I have 2 teenagers and
God bless you.
you know what, actually they're great. They're really, really great. And I've kind of really given them freedom and kind of permission to be guided by their own wisdom. And I've really kind of seen, especially with my 15-year-old, because I let him make a choice around something he wanted to do in school. And it was an easier path in terms of, you know, his exams and stuff. But I just thought, yeah, okay. And he did it for about 6 weeks and he came back to me and he said, actually, I think I'd like to do the other one now. You know, and it was that he saw his own ability, not me saying, oh, you're bright and you're well able. He went, tried it and went, actually, this is kind of boring. I think I'd like to do the normal exams, and it was no problem. And we switched him over. And it was because all along I had said, let's just play around with it. If you don't like it, you can change. You don't have to, you're not locked in, but for him to see it himself. And I love watching wisdom come through them because it's really clean. It's really clear. Like they haven't got so much in their thinking. And it's just like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I don't think I could put it in the book that way, but that I like. The censors would take it out.
Do you know what I love about that, Tracy, is the fact that that bullshit thinking, or as you say, usually the parent would feed into that by telling them stories about what path they should take and what path they shouldn't take, and they should be doing this and they should be doing that. But you haven't fed him no bullshit, so you just fed him his wisdom and said, go forth and find your wisdom. And he went off, found it, and found that worked for him. His wisdom drew him back to where he should be. And that didn't, what we have a habit of doing is piling on that bullshit story. But you've said you're as wise as you're ever going to need to be. So you can make that decision. And a lot of us are thinking to think, there's a trap there. He's going to hurt himself or he's going to fall there. So I need to step in with my wisdom to sort of override his and track his wisdom alongside as my wisdom. But no, they're all independent individuals. So he's got enough wisdom as he's ever going to need in that moment. And you showing him that and not feeding on that bullshit, giving him more bullshit to work with. He's just working with the freedom of the wisdom what you enabled him to see. And I think that's just beautiful. As a teenager, to know that, yeah, you have got your own wisdom in place. And for your mother or your father to say, go and explore your wisdom, you can do that. It's such an empowering thing. I'm not on an intellectual level, but on a deeper level. Like he knows that he's got what he needs, and he knows it's okay to take a left and then come back. Because a lot of the time we're frightened of, it's too late. You've made that decision, so it's too late. That's another bit of the bullshit trying to feed into them. No, it's never too late. If you follow your path and then you decide to take a left at the last minute, because that's the step that you feel you need to take, then that's where you're taking, and that is okay. And I love that. That takes strength to do that. There's a lot of thinking going on in what path you want children to take. but for you to have your own wisdom, to know that he's feeds his wisdom even more. I love that little story. I do.
And it was a challenge, you know, because I saw that when he came to me first, I was like, no. And I had to kind of go, and I thankfully wisdom tells me to shut the F up quite a bit. That's exactly how it talks to me in my head. And I went and I reflected on it, and I saw that I was about to make a decision based on the fear of other people's judgment.
Hello?
And I went, okay. And there was some, you know, why is he doing that? And why isn't he doing, like, there was judgment from other people. And I did get a little bit, you know, in my thinking about it. But I just was like, you know, yeah, I don't know. There's been a few things recently with my kids where it just makes sense to me to do something. It utterly conflicts everything I've been taught. But all I can say is it just makes sense to me to follow this path right now. So may not make sense to you, but, you know, and I don't know what that is until it only in retrospect. And I guess that's the trust and the faith, isn't it? That I don't know what the sense of this is right now, but I will in retrospect. That's kind of something that I've seen quite a bit.
Tracy, I think it's really beautiful that you saw for your son, you had faith in his resilience. You had faith that he'd land on his feet. You know, that's probably the greatest gift as a parent you can give is not, I think we think worry is what you should do as a parent. That's what my mom always did, was worry about me, worry. And no wonder I learned to be a worrier. But I thought that was love. But I'll never forget when my dad, this was after I'd learned the principles for 20 years, and I had an institute, Minneapolis Institute of Mental Health, which was we had lots of staff, 18 on our staff. We had 5,000 clients we had seen with the principles. We did training, we did all these things. It was wonderful. And then it was not working. I was losing money every month, a lot of money every month. And I was trying to keep it going, and I didn't want to disappoint the Three Principles community and Sid. And I had all this burden on my shoulders thinking, what am I doing wrong? What am I not seeing here? You know? And so as a last resort, I went to my dad, because he was a very successful businessman. I thought, well, he'll know, and maybe he'll bail me out. And the best thing he ever gave me was that he said, I just have total trust in you, Joe, that you're going to see how to do this. You're going to see how to do this. And that was way better than money. Way better. And I don't know, there's something about when people believe in you, when they see the health in you, when you can't see it in yourself, it draws it out. You know, I think in training therapists and coaches, what I always say to people is, your main job is just to see the health in people. Don't see them as their labels or their identities, because that's not who they are. And when you see beyond what they see to who they really are, it's like water on a tulip bulb. You know, good soil, a little water, and pretty soon you got a tulip. Boom.
Wow. Well, I feel like we could talk all night. However,
There, isn't it?
I know, it's amazing. We've got a few moments left. If anybody has a burning question or something else they'd like to add. Alfie.
I just quickly wanted to say how the story that you shared about the concentration camp, it was such an interesting and clear, extreme way of seeing judgment on two sides and that choice point. And as you were sharing that, I thought, gosh, every every place of judgment in my life is a kind of significant, or has that opportunity. It's just that the judgments might be more invisible or not seem so extreme or something like that. But it you know, just as that significant as that seems in that story, it's the same, has the same significance for every place in my life that I'm judging myself or judging, I don't know, just there's so many judgments that we're kind of invisibly kind of exposed to or that are going on. And yeah, I just saw how sometimes when something is so big and clear, like in that example, it seems as if that's different from my mini judgments, but actually it's just the same place of choice to turn to love and not fear or hate or something. Yeah, so I'm grateful. Thank you.
Gentle little soul, aren't you?
Alfie's our beautiful, beautiful Alfie. That's what how we'll introduce her from now on.
And I think what she just said as well just highlights that it does come down to the choice, that nothing can overpower us or overtake us, like this pure feeling, what Joe's been talking about. It's our choice if we want to let something else overtake us. But when we get into that space, that is our natural position, and we have to choose otherwise. I just love that. It does come down to choice. If you can choose to move in that direction from that position, then surely I can choose to do anything I really want to do from my position. And I see that as beautiful. A powerful story, Joe.
Wow.
Joe
So,
wants to say something
Joe,
quickly?
yeah, Joe from Australia.
Hi everyone. Hi Joe from Minnesota. Yeah, I love the cover of your book, the one that's not published yet, or the one.
Really?
Yeah, I love the cover and I love the title. I love the title as well. And I was just thinking though, as you were talking, you were talking about being in the eye, but what I love about the cover is that transcendence kind of above it, so you can see it from the from above and kind of see the whole storm, see the entire hurricane. We have them here, and although I haven't been in a really fierce hurricane, but not myself, but I've seen the destruction, and I just love how there's that opportunity to kind of know the eye, but also transcend it, so that you're kind of above it. So it is like that. There's something thrilling, like that whole thing about going through the waterfall. Your story there was also beautiful, that kind of thrill of almost wanting to go back for more, and just know that you can do that. You can kind of see above it, or you can kind of sort of, no matter whether it's a really small thing or something quite large in your life, that there is that place of, that place of kind of being above and knowing what it is like inside, but kind of being above. I'm not sure exactly what I'm trying to say, but I do like that. I do like that thought of that. So I might play with that. But thank you so much. It's been lovely to listen to your stories and what you've said and what everyone else has contributed. It's been really nice, really. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Yo, J-O-H. That's a great spelling. I have never seen that.
It's short for Joanna.
Oh,
So
okay.
Joanna with an H, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I go by Joe.
Me too.
So, are there any closing comments, Joey B, that you'd like to make in terms of your book, or where people can get it, or?
Well, it'll be out in the UK in December, and you can pre-order it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, any site, or you can go to my website and you can pre-order it there through the publisher or whatever. So it's easy peasy. One other thing I did want to say, last night on a TV station in the US that's called Lifetime, it's a cable channel, they had the story of Richard Carlson's life. Richard Carlson was my best friend for a very long time, and he died when he was 46. He wrote a book called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, which is sold 30 million copies worldwide, by the way. And so they made a story about his life and his death, and how his wife, Chris, has kind of taken this forward in her life and how she dealt with it. But I was just thinking about how the principles have gone out in the world in so many unique ways that it's like when you put something out, like Sid's experience just started this rippling effect that has gone out way beyond any of us personally could ever have imagined. I mean, I know for me, I never imagined I would ever be doing 99.9% of the things that I've ended up doing in my life. They were like way beyond my highest expectations. But I've just been like this surfer riding the wave of that. I'm not the wave, I'm just the surfer, trying to stand up, stay on the board. And it just gives me, that just gave me another shiver when I saw, wow, that's just another example of how this is going out in the world in a really big way. Very humbling.
Oh, it's beautiful. Thank you.
It's weird. The day Richard died, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I just woke up, wide awake, and the room was filled with all this glistening, multicolored lights. And, wow, what the hell just happened? And I couldn't imagine, I never had an experience like that. That's pretty far out, as they said in the 60s. And I hadn't taken any acid either, no drugs were involved. And so that morning, Chris, his wife, called us hysterical that Richard had just died. It was the 10th anniversary of Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. He was going to do the morning Today show in New York City, and he died on the airplane of a pulmonary embolism. Just a freak thing. 46 years old. Beginning of his career, really. And it just reminds me of just, we're in a really magical, mystical carpet ride journey here. If we could just wake up and see it.
That's beautiful, Jay. Thank you so much. That's a perfect ending. Perfect ending.
I love talking to you guys, and I love being with you guys. It's just wonderful seeing everybody's face.
Love you being with us as well. And I didn't tell the secret, so you'll have to come on the Facebook page if you want to know the secret about me and Joe.
The secret?
Yeah, I'm not going to tell them.
Oh, okay. How do I do that?
I've invited you to the Wisdom Entrepreneurs Facebook page.
Okay.
I'll reveal on there.
Okay.
Sounds intriguing.
I want to let go again and see where it pops me up.
But thank you so much, Joe, and thank you everybody for being on here tonight. Really, really appreciate you, and lots of love. See you soon.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Joe.
Go have a nice
Love you all.
ride.
Thank you.
Bye.
When you
Thank
pop up.
you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye bye.
Love.